Hello. Do you feel like video marketing is your social media kryptonite? You're not alone, but fret no more because today we're joined by Karlyn Ankrom, the fan fire starter herself, to help you conquer your video marketing fears and build authentic connections with your audience, even if you're starting from scratch. Tune in and ditch the imposter syndrome. It's time to ignite your video marketing content creation journey today with Strategy Talks. If you're ready, so am I. Let's do this.
Let's strategize together. Let's hear it from an expert. Join the conversation, it's informative and free. You and me, let's talk some strategy. Now here's your host, to read Morin-van down.
Hello, everybody. I am back with another episode of Strategy Talks. And those of you couldn't see it at all, but in the green room, I've got the dancing queen herself with me, and she was dancing to the little jingle. Before I bring her out, I want to welcome all of you to Strategy Talks. If you're watching this live, make sure you let us know in the comments that you're joining us live so we can answer your questions. If you're watching this on the replay, put hashtag replay in the comments so both Karlyn and I can see those questions you have. And for those of you who are listening to Strategy Talks as a podcast, as always, we want to welcome you as well. So without much further ado, here is Karlyn.
Hello, good morning. Yeah, that was catchy. I was like, do, 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 like just dancing around. That was super fun.
I know, it's a great little tune. So Karlyn, Oh Snap Social, you are into teaching people video marketing. But before we get into that piece, 2 years ago, more than 2 years ago, when I started Strategy Talks, my first episode, guys, was about imposter syndrome, because who was I to start this Strategy Talks video show, live show every week, right? I felt very much like an imposter, even though I've been in social media at that time for over 11 years. And if I have this fear and if I have this feeling, other people do too. So Karlyn, before we get into, your framework that you have for getting started, let's talk about imposter syndrome a little bit. What is it? How to overcome it? What do you see people and what do you hear people say about it?
Yes, I love talking about this topic because I think, to your point, we've all felt this level of like imposter syndrome or this level of comparisonitis, right? Where there's this self-doubt of, are we good enough? Are we smart enough? Do we have the skills that are needed to take us to the next level? And I will tell you, most of the time, this happens to those who are already among the high achieving individuals where we're like, oh, we don't feel good enough. But the thing is, on social media, that feeling tends to get elevated with every passing scroll. And so as I'm talking to people, talking to clients, it's how can we get them out of their own way so they can start showing up as who they authentically are without focusing on anyone else, but who they're trying to serve and what they do and where their zone of genius is. And so the biggest thing that I said is practice, 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 right? Like we already know there are several different ways on social that you can practice being on video. On Instagram, you can practice going live in practice mode. Like there is a practice mode area in Instagram to do that. Facebook, you can record a video and set the audience to only yourself, only me can see it. Now, LinkedIn's a little bit trickier, right? Like, I feel like, you got to just kind of share it out there. Do you know of a way, Doreen, of like how to, I personally don't, but
practice on LinkedIn? No. What I do is I record and practice on my phone and then watch it over and over. What I tell people is just, have a script, 30 seconds, do it over, and every time you make a mistake, watch it and delete it and go do it again and do another take and do another take. Because when you do that, and for those of you who are watching or are listening, you're going to learn a bunch of stuff. You're going to figure out how your phone works, right? You're going to figure out the angles of your camera, because sometimes it's not what you say, but you realize the lighting is wrong or the angle is wrong.
Yes.
And then you're just going to get over yourself. If you watch yourself 10 times saying the same thing and making different mistakes, you're going to get over yourself. So the practice on LinkedIn, I would just say do it on your phone. But I love that what you said about Facebook, only you mode. That's perfect.
Yeah, because sometimes it's just like we record it and we're like, okay, this is okay, and then there's just something about like pressing publish. It's like that extra step that gives us a little bit of like the heebie-jeebies.
Anxiety.
Yeah.
Anxiety. Yeah, no, it's real. It's
thing.
real for sure. It's real.
And I love what you said about like repeating the practicing on your phone. And I feel like 9 times out of 10, if you do that over and over and over again, you'll quickly discover that maybe the first or second take was actually the best take.
Yes. Well, and I recommend people delete it. So maybe then that's not the best if the first or the second was the best, but yeah, for sure. I mean, practicing is really good, and listening and hearing yourself speak. There's a lot of filler words. If you do any video editing later on, I'm going to talk about video editing, but you realize how many filler words you use. Maybe you start your sentence with and or so. The way to not do that is to take a breath and then think about the next sentence and starting and then ending the sentence instead of just rambling on, which I used to do all the time, and just keep going. So there are things that you learn from watching yourself on camera, but it's not required. If you, right?
Yes. It's about getting it out there. A big thing when I say, how people are like, well, Karlyn, how do I overcome this imposter syndrome? I wish it was as easy as flipping a light switch, but it is not. So in addition to practice, I think having that consistency, right? Getting out there over and over and over again, because it's a lot easier to kind of keep that fire going rather than having to oust it and then reignite it every single time you're ready to go and share something on video. And the other thing that I always tell people, because we get a lot in our heads, right, when it comes to looking at other people's content.
Sure.
So I'm a big proponent of create first, consume second, which I know is different from what you have said in the past too. But I like the way that you have framed the trend identifiers, then go and create. So there's a differentiate. So it comes with that self-awareness piece. Where are you finding you're getting stuck and stagnant and going from there?
Right. So I think there's the distinction here is if you do it for your personal brand, you don't go do that research. You are you authentic. You don't need to go watch other people to create something for yourself. You're you, put yourself out there the way you're authentic. But if you're a social media manager or content creator, you have to go out and consume the content in order to see what's trending, what the patterns are, what's going on. Even just the length of videos, getting close up, or, are the things going on? There's constantly new things. And even on TikTok, I keep seeing people saying, my videos are doing, my photographs or my images are doing well on TikTok, and that might just be a little gimmick right now. But, if that's the case, then once a week, post an image instead of a video and do that. So that's where the consuming part, but you are right about your personal brand. You don't need to watch other people to know who you are, right?
I mean, I would hope not, but and that's where it gets, when we let more of that consumption in, that's when like the imposter syndrome starts to bubble up. And so that's where at the same time, taking the pause and conditioning our feed so that it's serving us, I think is also another, strategy, air quote strategy, that isn't used often, because people are like, why do I always feel like garbage when I open my feed on Instagram, on LinkedIn, on Facebook? Well, who do you have on there? Are you following people that inspire you, motivate you? Or are you following people who maybe kind of get into your psyche a little bit and don't let you progress forward? And I will speak from experience. I have muted people. I have unfollowed people in my industry because I felt some kind of way about it. Right. And for those of you who are Instagram folks here, if you mute somebody, you won't see their posts, but you'll still see their reels if they're viral.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, that's good. I actually was going to bring up community. What if somebody is suffering from imposter syndrome and they're worried about what the community is going to think or say or do? Are there certain things you can do or support you can ask for or expect when you start going live? If you've built a community, if you, you know, are connected to a bunch of people, should you do some strategy ahead of time? Like, I'm ready to go live, I'm starting a show, I got to get my 5 besties on there. Or what do you suggest? How can we leverage that community that we have?
I think that's great. I think doing any type of content, asking your audience what they want to hear about, asking if it's even something that they want from you. I think it also extends over to your email list, right? Because those are like your ride or dies. Those are people that are there for you. They're excited for your next step. Tell them that you're going live. And then to your point, and I love that, like ask people in the industry who you admire, who also have a similar audience, to be a guest, if that's the format of your show or your videos. I think it's always easier to do video content with somebody else. One, because it's more fun. And
I'm pointing, I'm in a mirror this way. Yes, 100%. Yes.
Yeah, it's always more fun when you have other people. But I also know that takes additional planning and all of that. So just be aware of what type of content you're putting out there, how you're formatting it, so that you can make it as consistent as possible.
All right. Now, I heard you say, ask for feedback. What do people want to see? I do think that imposter syndrome can creep in even worse when you ask too many people too many questions and get too much feedback, right? Because I just want to throw a big caution sign right there, because if you ask too much of your community and too much input, you're never going to get started. And I just want to say that again. Just make sure you have a plan and you know you're going to get started, and maybe ask about topics or ask about guests, but don't ask about the format or ask about, should I start a show? Because you're going to get opinions you don't like.
Yes. Or don't want or don't need. And then you get overwhelmed, and then you're like, all these people have all of these ideas. Now I'm even more confused than when I was before I asked for all this feedback.
All right. So let's start with video marketing. For somebody who is an expert at some topic, say you're an expert at building ice sculptures, right? So you write about it. You're an expert. You teach people. You have in-person classes. How does that translate? What are some of the first steps that you could tell somebody that comes to you and says, I think I need to take this online? How do you start video marketing? How do you even start that process? And if that's part of your framework, I would love to hear it. Let's combine these questions together.
Yeah. I think the biggest thing is to ask yourself, if you're thinking about transitioning from like in-person to kind of elevating your presence online, is why? What is your goal from that? And so within our framework, we have PSA. We love a good acronym in the Washington, D.C. area, which is where I'm based. So pulse check, strategy, and advance. Pulse check is really unpacking where you're starting from. Because if you don't know the numbers, the goals, how much content you're creating on a regular basis, all of that, then you cannot formulate a strategy that makes sense and is attainable going forward. And so that's where we always start. What are our goals? Where are we starting from? How many followers do we have? Why that many? What's our email list look like? Because yes, we also look at how all the digital dots are connecting to get you the result that you want at the other side. So then the strategy piece really is taking those goals, creating those SMART goals that we all know and love, right? Of why, if you're having these ice sculptures, I love that example. That is so random and fabulous.
I'm looking out my window and there's snow. How about that?
I'm like,
I'm
ice
in
sculptures,
Vermont,
woo!
guys. We have
You know?
ice, we have snow. Yes.
Yeah, I love that. And so in that strategy is where you're going to have those content ideas, those content pillars. And within that, the easiest place to start are the frequently asked questions that you get. Always, always the easiest place. And you might find, well, that's so simple, Karlyn. Like, why would, because that is how simple people need your content. And video marketing requires it to be in short segments. So thinking about that, what are the most, and what is the most intricate design, showing the tools. I will tell you something similar, and this just popped into my brain, is someone I know creates those beautiful paper flower walls, like
Yeah.
backdrops for events, for people to take selfies and photos. And one of her videos of her utilizing a drill and a bobby pin and putting her paper around it, and zzz, it like made the flower in like 0.5 seconds, and it went viral. So people want to kind of see like how you do what you do. Like, do you have, music playing? Do you have like a cool hack that you use that makes your craft, in this instance, different than someone else?
Right.
And you just never know, but FAQs, start there.
FAQs. I love that. That's great. So let's talk about the power of that Fanfire framework, PSA. Can it be applied to anything? Like any kind of video? What do you recommend? You said short video. What if you want to start, or somebody wants to start, they have nothing else. They don't have a blog, they don't have a podcast. What if they say, well, I want to do YouTube? Do you still start with short, or do you start with longer videos that you then cut into short? What would you recommend there?
Long form for sure. Especially if you're starting with YouTube, because I'm a big proponent of like this idea of having like an anchor piece of content. If it's, for me, it's my blogs, for you, it's like this show is one of them, for you, what's the piece of content that only you can create? And video is a great anchor piece because, AI is changing the game all the time. But for now, we are really ourselves on video. And then you can give that long form content to a social media manager or a VA, and they can slice and dice it and make shorter clips. And there's tons of tools to do that, or you can do it the good old fashioned way and roll up your sleeves and get to work,
Yeah, I don't think we'd have to do that anymore. I do think AI has changed the game. I spent a couple of months at the end of last year really diving into video editing, because partly I had heard you speak about short form video at Social Media Suriname, where both you and I traveled to South America in October, and really had not been doing enough of short form video. And I was doing these long videos every week, and I had been doing it for 2 years. And I was like, I really need to learn how to do this, because I'm leaving so much on the table. I've had, at that point, over 80 guests whose videos live on YouTube, but they're long form. And so their best takes weren't being seen. So this year I took that, I did the video editing course, and learned to take the best of the best and put it out, and with wonderful results. So definitely something to think about. So let's do some practical advice, Karlyn. What do you need to get started? Because I think that's not necessarily imposter syndrome, but we get hung up. I see you have a microphone. I see it right there. And if you're watching, guys, I have one right here as well. I'm going to put mine down. Yeah. So we both have a microphone, right? What else do we need? Do we need a fancy camera? Do we need a webcam? Do we need a whole tuning board? Do we need a producer? What do we need to get started with video marketing? Because I think that's I think there are people among us, not me being one, but that overthink everything. I'm more of a doer. I'll just go try things. But I know there's a lot of people out there that are not doers that want it perfect.
Oh, yeah.
Tell us, how can we get started simple?
Yeah, simple. Like, listen, I am team no fancy pants over here. I am like, this microphone just made an appearance this year when I was being on more podcasts and things like that. And I was like tired of sounding like I was in a tin can. And so for me, all you really need is good light, natural light from a window, which is what I think we probably are both kind of having right now.
I'm in front of a window. Yep.
Like that's really all you need. And your phone these days, you guys can shoot in 4K video. We have basically an entire video production studio in our back pockets these days. And yes, if you want an editing tool, there's a million and one out there. I like InShot. I know CapCut's another one for those fun, like bouncy captions. But it's really just a quiet space, good light, a tripod, maybe. I've also used a stack of books before. Like, listen, I've used my windowsill.
I've got a box sitting right here. Yeah, I have a laundry basket.
I have like this like cool thing that I got that like you can like stick it on places. You know, you do what you can do. But a lot of us are utilizing not having the right tools as an excuse to not do the thing that we need to do.
All right. Do we need a script? Let's get down to basics. Do we need a script, or can we just ramble things? Karlyn.
No to rambling, but also no to script. The reason why I say that is because we then overthink, oh, I didn't get that word just right. Or, oh, that doesn't sound like me. It sounds like I'm reading. And so for me personally, I have a sticky note. I'm queen of the Post-its. And I just stick it right onto I stick it right onto my phone or just above on the window where I'm talking. And I just utilize those bullet points to make sure that I hit all the key points. And that's it.
And is there any length of short form video that you recommend? I know that like YouTube shorts and reels have to be under a minute. Is that what you usually recommend, or what do you?
It really changes. And so at the time of us recording this here, I'm going to say no more than 7 seconds on Instagram reels.
Seriously?
Yeah, it's so short. It is so short, Doreen. It's like kind of sad. Like, but I will
what can you say in 7 seconds? One sentence.
Great. Which is why I think a lot of people, especially on Instagram right now, are going with like the B-roll with the text overlay for a few reasons. One, it loops in the background as everyone's trying to read the long caption. But I also think if you're doing a talking head video, I don't know where this is my puppet apparently. If you're doing a talking head video, then you need to have it a little bit longer, but keep it short and succinct at less than a minute. But most of the content that I'm seeing right now that is short form video is less than 7 seconds. And a lot of the meat and potatoes is on screen or in the caption.
Okay. So if we're talking high impact, low effort, that would be reels that are less than 7 seconds.
Yep.
That's crazy.
I know.
That's crazy. Now, what about YouTube Shorts? Because I know you're the queen of Instagram. What about YouTube Shorts or TikToks?
So I am not on TikTok, full transparency, because I would never escape from TikTok. If I were to go all in on it, I would never leave it. I would just be consumed into the depths of its soul. So I'm not sure about that one. YouTube Shorts, I'm just starting to clip things. But my strategy over there is to do what you've been saying, that you're doing, like the 15-second kind of sound bites in order to get people to the longer form video. That's going to be my strategy going forward.
Yeah. So we were talking in the green. Yeah. Were talking, were we talking in the green room about this? We were, right? Yeah. So I was saying, I've been clipping these videos that you're watching, that the episodes you're listening to, if you're listening to the podcast. And when I first started, I clipped them close to a minute because I wanted to use, and they were getting seen, but nothing like now. I'm as little as seconds as 13 seconds to maybe 20. And that's really hitting the sweet spot on YouTube Shorts. So, that can change. We're in the end of February, live in 2024. That by March or April, if you're listening to this later, could be different already. So definitely this is why you want to do a little bit of research, depending on, what you're working
and
on.
Test and tweak. Always be testing. And I think that's where people get again, going back to imposter syndrome, they get a little down in the dumps because they're like, oh, this didn't perform well. It's like, okay, well, go back to the drawing board, try something different. Try a different length, do a talking head video versus, a B-roll video, because every audience is different and you're different as a personal brand. Your business is a different business than a competitor. Really highlight those differentiators and just keep being curious. I think that's where us as social media people, like that's kind of in our blood, is to just be always testing and, being curious about whatever it is that's coming out.
Sure.
For good, bad, or otherwise, right?
Yeah. So I want to touch on something that you had said earlier that, in order to keep going and to get past imposter syndrome, you don't want to start and stop, because every time you stop, you have to get back over yourself. So do you have any strategies or any tips for somebody that says, well, I made one video last year and I enjoyed the process, but now I have to get started again? For them to get started and stick with it, what are some ideas that you could give somebody? How maybe your own workflow, or maybe the commitment that you want to make? Can you talk about that?
Yes. So for me, it comes with a lot of self-awareness, number one. And the biggest thing is I know that I am fresh in the morning before like the world inundates me with all of the things. And so that's why I'm really excited when we're recording this live. It is early because I'm like on it. I got a lot to say. I got a lot of energy. If we did the same thing at 3:00, I would be like, hi, And so 1, self-awareness. 2, knowing when you're in flow. I batch evergreen content. By evergreen, it never goes stale, whether it's B-roll, whether it's me sharing a tip or an FAQ. I batch all of that at once.
Okay.
And that way it's done for the week or for the month or whatever. For me, I only post, if I'm lucky, 3 times a week. Video content. And it doesn't always happen because I'm busy doing everyone else's content. But for me, 3 times a week, and I don't beat myself up if I don't get it all done. But I know I need to batch it. And I usually do that either Sunday, even Sunday morning, actually, when everyone's kind of still asleep doing their thing, or Monday morning. And I just batch for the week and I'm done.
That makes a lot of sense. I love that because for something like this show, I try to be ahead at least 8 to 12 guests. For me, the biggest piece of advice that made all the difference for me, somebody said, if you want to keep going, you need to have at least 12 guests when you start, lined up, ready to go, because that's 3 months. That becomes a habit. So I invited 20 people, 12 people booked, and I got 3 months worth of people lined up. There was no way I wasn't going to start this show because I had already set that up with everybody. So I try to stay ahead. I'm about 8 weeks out now, and I'm ready to send another round of invites to people. And so I just want to stay ahead of that. So I'm going to keep going with this show, doing that. And I love what you said about batch recording. Now for us women, there's probably a tip in there. Do you look the same, wear the same thing, or do you make it look like you record this on different days? Because I've done that before, where I just change out my jacket or my earrings and, pretend it's different days. What do you do?
I used to do that, but now I just quite honestly don't have the energy. So I just kind of show up how I am and I get the 3 pieces of content done. But I do, if you want to do that, please do that. I am a big proponent of changing it up, looking different. But yeah, you'll see on my feed, it's the same sweater, the same shirt. You'll see the same thing on my YouTube channel. Just because these days, as an 18-month-old, you're lucky I'm wearing makeup. You know what I mean?
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. All right, Karlyn, this has been a wonderful conversation. If you're watching this on the replay, or if you've listened to this on a podcast, you need to connect with Karlyn. This framework that she has is amazing. She got me started on short form video. I was in her session. I was like, I'm doing it today, and then I'm going to make a plan for the new year, and I've stuck with it. So your motivation, your words really landed with me. And if you're watching this and you feel the same way, connect with Karlyn. Karlyn, where are you most active? Where do you want people to connect with you? And how can they find you?
You can find me at osnapsocial.com. And then on social, I am most active on LinkedIn and Instagram. So find me on those places.
All right. Wonderful. Well, I'll be back next week with another episode of Strategy Talks. And Karlyn, thank you so much for being my guest today. And I'll see you all next week. Bye, everybody.
Bye.